So I thought I would go over my things I don't like about my car. Now, just for the record, I really like this car. This might be potentially the car that I actually keep for a long time. It will be a good daily car, a good daily sports car alongside, maybe you can argue, a Porsche. Again, I'm single, I don't have any kids or anything, so the issue of the back seat's not too much of an issue for me. But these are just some few deal breakers, I would say, that maybe I would like to know before I purchase the car, and maybe it'll help you out. For some of you it will make a difference, but these could be some few things that can make a big difference. The first thing is the window. So what happens is it's a windowless frame, so as you can see, when the window drops when you open the door, and then when you close the door, the window rises. Now the issue is, in cold weather, let's say freezing cold weather, the issue is the window doesn't sometimes drop, and sometimes it stays up and doesn't drop when you close it. So if you imagine it's a really snowy day outside, sorry, a frozen day, sometimes the window can be stuck and you can't close the door. The only way you can close the door is if you shatter the glass. So that is one big inconvenience, I would say, mainly in the winter time. But I would say that is one thing that potentially would stray you away if you maybe live up north, or if you live in a country that's a bit more colder most of the time. I live in UK, it's always miserable here most of the year. Very lucky to have sun in early June. That's something just to bear in mind. So that could be a deal breaker. It's probably one of the most annoying things I don't like about my car, because imagine it's a freezing cold day, I start up my car, either I can't open my door or I can't close it. Shout out to Rappy, I watched his video. I did put the liquid, the gummy fledge thing, but for some reason it doesn't always work. So you should ideally lubricate your seals all the time, but otherwise it can take some time. So if you're in a rush in the morning, something you've got to take into account. The next thing is the boot. So I'm referring there's two ways I want to split this up. The first one is the number plate light. The number plate light I've replaced twice in my lifetime. The first time the number plate light went out, and then the second time it went out again, I replaced it, and I also got the silicone replaced. Now apparently this lasts about 2-3 years, but the issue is rainwater, when it's raining, especially if you open a boot, goes inside and basically breaks the light bulb. Basically it's a strip. It's not like a normal conventional car where you can replace the bulbs. You basically effectively have to replace the whole light strip. It's £120. There's no third-party ones, for basically a piece of plastic and 2 mediocre poor standard LEDs. Absolutely rip off. That cost about £450 in total. Hopefully I don't have to do it again. But that was one of the biggest downsides. That's one issue with the boot. The second issue is when you open a boot. So normal boots, they kind of open like, that's the back of the car, they open like this. This boot opens like that because it's the massive whole distance. I'll see if I can put a video in here. The issue is when it's raining, you cannot open a boot. Now what I normally do is I put the seats down. I normally get my stuff out from this side. But if it's raining, don't open your boot, because everything in your boot's going to get wet. I've cleaned the gutter system. I've even got it professionally cleaned and everything. The problem is it's the way it's designed. The water basically kind of tips over the side and kind of drips down into the boot. So if there's water on the boot or it's raining, water's going to get inside. I vividly remember, I went to a meeting, went to a hotel, parked up, it was raining. I knew about this issue, so I waited a little bit. Maybe about an hour later, light rain, went to get it, all the dirty water went into my boot, even through my suit bags and everything, and it was a nightmare. So something just to bear in mind, if it's raining, you can't open the boot. So when it's frozen, you can't open the door and then the boot. It's two problems that shouldn't really exist with a car. Okay, maybe you can get away with the window one too much, just put hot water, maybe warm water should I say, and wait a bit. But the boot one is kind of unacceptable. Unless you put everything through the front, you put the seats down. So maybe not so much for inconvenience for me anymore, but it is one thing you got to factor into account. And again, the back seats, I don't care. They're like gym bag, briefcase, whatever you want to put in the back. I don't use them as actual seats. One of my friend's girlfriends, who's 5'1", barely kind of sat inside one. So they're not really seats. Think of them as like extra storage, put it that way. The next one will be a big one, is the drive firmness. Now, when I was looking at this car, I was looking at the RS and the 718. And the Porsche 718, I was actually leaning towards a lot more. The only issue was the insurance for the RS and 718 was like 10 grand. I live in London. Even this one was a few grand. So the insurance was a killer. But I didn't want to spend 10 grand. That's ridiculous on insurance. But I thought this car as well, one of the benefits is the ride wouldn't be too bad. I haven't got the best of backs, sports injuries, so I thought it wouldn't be too bad. Unfortunately, it's a really firm drive. If you're going over bumps over 10 miles per hour even, you're feeling everything. So if you live in London, or you live in somewhere there's loads of bumps and it's quite a harsh drive, even in comfort, I'm putting the everything in the comfort mode. I'm not using sport mode or anything. It's a very firm and stiff ride. People say the mag ride makes it worse. I don't know. I've got mag ride. It's a really firm drive. So something just to bear in mind. Short distance is not too much of an issue, but maybe long distance it can be. So something just to bear in mind. What this kind of also comes together with is the seat position. Now, the issue with me is I'm not that tall. I'm only 6 foot, okay? But my legs are really long. And even with the square shape at the bottom of the steering wheel, my foot keeps hitting the steering wheel. So I have to kind of put my foot sideways. I've got my seat all the way down at the lowest level. And even then, and my seat's all the way back, and I still hit the steering wheel with my legs. Now, for short distances, 15, 20, 30 minutes is not too much of an issue. I don't really drive as longer than an hour ever, rarely. But after the test drive is something that I should have probably bared in mind. So I think for long distance, if you're tall, if you're short, it's not going to make that much difference. But I'm 6 foot with long legs. So maybe if you're 6'1", 6'2", something you got to bear in mind, it can really be uncomfortable. That's kind of goes and coincides with the firm drive and also the seat position. Apparently, this is a fully spec'd out one, but apparently the electric seats are able to go a bit further back and a bit lower, apparently. But just something again to bear in mind. So I would say for a lot of people that could be a deal breaker. So I thought this would be a more of a softer drive than the Porsche, but the Porsche was a softer drive. This is more firm. I don't know, maybe other Porsches could be different. I sat my mate's GT4. It wasn't too bad in comparison to this. I honestly thought mine was much worse. And that is also trying to avoid the bumps in London. But you know how the roads are in London. If you live in London, it's a disgrace. No matter how much tax we pay council tax, all this rubbish. The roads are just a shambles in London. Potholes everywhere. So just something just to bear in mind. Another thing that's not really a deal breaker, but an inconvenience, is the nav screen. So there's a virtual cockpit. Everything is on the cockpit. The only downside is there's no center screen. So when you want to reverse, everything's on a virtual cockpit. So when you turn your steering wheel, it blocks the reverse camera. If you want to navigate with Spotify using CarPlay, you have to use the rotary buttons and you have to scroll all the way down. So can you imagine you're on a Spotify playlist that begins with the letter Z? You have to scroll on all the way to the bottom. I'll see if I can insert a clip here. It is so tedious. So I wish they had like a touch screen. What I've done now is, where the camera is kind of, I've appended like an iPad mini there. It's actually a really good idea. I'd recommend that. Put an iPad mini there. But I would say that I wish there was some sort of like flip out screen even. I understand it's one of the most aesthetic, minimal designs, and I really like it. One of the reasons that sold me for this car. Maybe have like a pop out one. Maybe they could have lowered the buttons a little bit and had like a screen pop out there like the old Aston Martins. Something like that I think would have made a difference. That's one thing that I'm looking at getting an R8 next. That's one thing that maybe I'd sell this car for, but I think that's another same problem. Yes, massive increased performance, there's no doubt. But I think the no central screen, I know it's driver focused, can be a bit of a caveat. Something just to bear in mind. So if you like changing the songs, it's a bit tedious. It's not, again, not a deal breaker, but something you just got to bear in mind. But I put an iPad there for like a temporary solution, and I use that for Waze, and I renamed all my Spotify playlist. Everything begins with A, that I want it to go on the top. It's just something you got to bear in mind. Then the second last one, I'll do one more extra one actually, is the throttle response and the turbo lag. So this is a common issue. It's not too much of a thing, but the throttle response is not the best. I've heard you can get this adjusted, but it does feel a bit delayed. I've turned the stupid auto start and stop off, got rid of that garbage, but I don't like throttle response. Again, I'm nitpicking here. This is not going to affect 99% of people, but when I bought this car, I was only looking at this. There wasn't really anything else, maybe the S3. But again, I didn't want a practical car, maybe an S5. That was the only thing that was on my mind. But I wanted to think something a bit sporty. I didn't really want that. So that was the only kind of similar level performance. I was never going to get a Golf or anything like that. So that's just one thing. The throttle response isn't the most responsive, put it that way. You can put your foot down. Sometimes it can feel a bit laggy, especially in the lower gears. Something just to bear in mind. And the last one, something that I was kind of disappointed with. So when I bought this car, I spent months, literally every single day, just searching for a car that was almost fully spec'd. I got almost everything apart from electric seats, and that's the best I get with a grey interior. Daytona grey is what I wanted. I waited months. It was so hard to get one of these, and I wanted pre-OPF. I didn't want the OPF particulate filter. Now, the one thing is the tech pack, which is very good. I've got Apple CarPlay. The thing that let me down the most is the sound system. Now, I have the Bang & Olufsen sound system, but it's very mediocre. I think people say it's amazing. It's honestly not. I mean, you're probably better, like let's say you couldn't get that, you're probably better off spending £500,000 less, for example, and just maybe getting a better sound system put in manually. Don't spend 3K or whatever it is to get a third party, because I know they stopped making TTSs, TTs and RSs now. Don't spend third party to get the Bang & Olufsen. It doesn't even sound that good. I use the FLAC files. The big issue I would say is you have to play the music. So what I was saying is you got to play the music quite loud for you to actually hear the song with the bass. Otherwise, even with the bass and treble maxed out, let's say, it can feel a bit airy, if that makes sense. It doesn't really have that oomph. It doesn't really have that sound stage that you'd want. So I know people have put like kind of like the little square like bass units, subwoofers in. That's the only downside. So to hear a song in its fullest quality, you got to use a FLAC file. And normally what I do is I turn the volume up, but at low volume, it doesn't sound the best. It sounds a bit flat and it doesn't really have that sound stage. So I personally think, and I think many people who actually listen to a lot of music, audiophiles, I would say, they would say it's a very mediocre system. The bass is very lethargic. Yes, you can put a third-party system in, but I think it's a very overrated system. So I would say, look, get it in, man. I'm looking at maybe changing my speakers and sound system. I'm not too sure, but that is probably the things I don't like about my car. Listen, don't get me wrong. I've tried to fix most of these issues. As I said, I'm probably going to keep this car forever. I'm thinking about never selling it. I think it's a really good daily sports car. I think for all weather conditions, you get quattro drive. The only thing that's probably better than this is an R8. That's the only thing. That's why I don't want to lean towards an R8, because I know it's a much better car, but it's not too different. Maybe I prefer like a rear-wheel drive car or something else, or maybe like a GTS. So that is probably the only thing that I would say with this car, is that unless I get an R8, I'm probably never going to sell this car. It's a very good practical daily sports car. If you haven't got anyone as an adult, let's say you're like a family of 2, or you got kids very small, or you got a dog, I think this is a perfect car. Boot opens up a lot, but that's the thing. I really like this car. This is not me complaining, but this is just things that I wish I could improve. It's, small things like the sound system, or maybe if I had heated steering wheel, why would I want that maybe in the winter? So these are just small things that I'm nitpicking, but again, I really like the car. There are just a few things that I would say: the seat position, the boot issue, and the firmness of the drive, I think, are 3 things that could be a deal breaker to some. I think this would be a perfect car to be alongside a 4x4. So this car, let me check now. I think here I'm getting 13 miles to the gallon. Okay, so it's not amazing. I'm in London, by the way, so it's a bit different. But if I drive in dynamic sports. If I wanted to, I could probably drive the car in economy, which I'm never going to do, and I could probably save a lot of money. I just think, personally speaking, if you're looking for an affordable sports car that doesn't cost that much to run, that's a very good daily you can use in the winter, 4-wheel drive, I think this is the one to go for. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Take it easy. Catch you next time.